Have you ever given your entire life to someone only to be tossed out like yesterday's trash the moment they hit the jackpot? Alice certainly did. Her husband Marcus didn't just want a divorce, he wanted to destroy her. He laughed in her face, pointed at the door, and told her she'd leave with absolutely nothing. No money. No house. No dignity. He thought he held all the cards. He thought she was a helpless housewife with nowhere to turn. But Marcus made one fatal calculation error. He forgot who Alice's family was. And he definitely didn't expect the man who walked into the courtroom to own the very company Marcus worked for. The sound of the porcelain vase shattering against the marble floor echoed through the foyer of the sprawling estate in Hidden Hills. It was a jagged, ugly sound, the sound of a 10-year marriage finally breaking apart. Alice stood near the staircase, her hands trembling by her sides. She wasn't the one who had thrown it. That had been Marcus. "Get out!" Marcus growled, his face flushed with a mixture of scotch and rage. He adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke Italian suit, a suit Alice had picked up from the dry cleaners just yesterday. "I'm done, Alice. I am finally done dragging you along." Alice stared at him, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Marcus, please. You're drunk. Let's talk about this in the morning." "You don't mean—" "I mean every word," he roared, stepping over the shards of the Ming vase. He loomed over her, utilizing every inch of his 6'2" frame to intimidate her. It was a tactic he used in the boardroom at Sterling Vance Enterprises, and now he was using it on the woman who had paid his rent while he was in law school. "I filed the papers this morning. My lawyers, Bratton and Hughes, you know them. The sharks, they're sending over the courier within the hour. I want you gone before they get here." Alice felt the blood drain from her face. "Gone? Where am I supposed to go, Marcus? This is my home. We built this life together." "No." Marcus sneered, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. "I built this life. I closed the deals. I brought in the millions. You just decorated it." He laughed, a cold, dry sound. "And frankly, your taste has always been mediocre. Just like you." He turned his back on her, walking toward the wet bar to pour another drink. "I'm upgrading Alice. In life, in business, and in love. Jessica fits the image of a senior partner's wife. You look like a tired librarian." Jessica. The name hung in the air like toxic smoke. Jessica was his 24-year-old personal assistant, fresh out of college leggy and willing to laugh at all of Marcus's unfunny jokes. Alice had suspected it for months, seeing the late-night texts, the smell of unfamiliar perfume on his shirts, the way he guarded his phone like a state secret, but hearing him admit it so casually, as if replacing his wife was as simple as leasing a new car, shattered something deep inside her. "So that's it," Alice whispered, her voice gaining a sliver of steel. 10 years. I worked 2 jobs so you could study for the bar. I paid off your student loans. I nursed your mother when she was dying of cancer because you were too busy with work. And now you're trading me in—" Marcus took a sip of his drink and didn't even turn around. "It's a sunk cost, Alice. Business 101. Cut the dead weight." He turned, then his eyes hard. "And don't think you're getting a payout. I've had Bratton look over that prenup we signed a decade ago. It's ironclad. You leave with what you came with, which, if I recall, was a beat-up Honda Civic and a suitcase full of nothing. That prenup was supposed to protect us both," Alice argued, tears finally spilling over. "You said it was just a formality." "I lied," he said simply. "Now pack a bag. The security guards are already on their way up the driveway. If you aren't out in 20 minutes, I'll have them drag you out." The cruelty was breathtaking. This wasn't just a breakup. It was an eviction. It was an erasure. Alice turned and ran up the stairs, her breath hitching in her throat. She didn't pack clothes. She didn't pack jewelry. She went into the small safe in the back of her closet, the one Marcus didn't know the combination to, because he never cared about her personal sentimentalities. She grabbed a small velvet-covered box and a folder of documents. She threw a few essentials into a duffel bag, a change of jeans, a sweater, her laptop, and her phone charger. When she came back downstairs 15 minutes later, 2 burly security guards were standing by the front door, arms crossed. Marcus was sitting on the sofa, scrolling through his phone, looking bored. "Check her bag," Marcus ordered, without looking up. "Marcus, you can't be serious," Alice gasped. "Check it," he repeated. "I don't want her stealing any of my silverware." One of the guards, a man named Davis, who had known Alice for 3 years, and whom she had often brought coffee to on cold mornings, looked down at the floor, ashamed. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I have to." Alice handed over the bag. Davis barely glanced inside before zipping it back up. "It's just clothes, Mr. Sterling." "Fine." Marcus waved a hand dismissively. "Get her out of my sight." Alice walked to the door, but she paused with her hand on the brass handle. She turned back to look at the man she had loved for a decade. He looked like a stranger. "You think you've won Marcus," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "You think because you have the money and the lawyers you have all the power." "I do have the power, Alice. That's how the world works," he scoffed. "You told me to leave with what I came with," Alice said quietly. "You forgot what I actually came with. Poverty." He laughed. "No," she said, opening the door to the rainy night. "Family." She stepped out into the pouring rain, the heavy oak door slamming shut behind her, sealing off her past life. She walked down the long, winding driveway, the rain soaking through her thin blouse, mixing with the tears streaming down her face. She reached the gate where her old car, which Marcus had kept around as a spare for the gardener, was parked. She climbed inside, shivering. She didn't turn the key immediately. Instead, she pulled out her phone. Her hands shook as she scrolled through her contacts, past the fake friends who would side with Marcus, past the acquaintances who would gossip about this tomorrow. She scrolled all the way to Alexander. She hadn't called him in 5 years. Not since she married Marcus. Marcus had hated her family, calling them blue-collar nobodies from the Midwest. To keep the peace, Alice had distanced herself. She had stopped visiting. She had stopped calling. She had let Marcus isolate her completely. She pressed the call button and held the phone to her ear, listening to the ring. 1 ring, 2 rings. "Hello." The voice was deep authoritative, but laced with a familiar warmth she hadn't realized how desperately she missed. "Xander," she choked out, her voice breaking. There was a pause on the other end. Then the tone shifted instantly from casual to alert. "Ellie, is that you? What's wrong?" He kicked me out, Xander," she sobbed, clutching the steering wheel. "Marcus, he threw me out. He says I get nothing. He's leaving me for his assistant. I have nowhere to go." Silence stretched on the line for 3 heartbeats. When Alexander spoke again, his voice was terrifyingly calm. It was a coldness that made Marcus's rage look like a toddler's tantrum. "Where are you right now?" I'm just outside the gate of the estate." "Go to the Four Seasons downtown. I'll arrange a suite. Do not speak to anyone. Do not sign anything." "Xander, I can't afford the Four Seasons." "Alice," he cut her off, his voice softening. "You aren't paying for it." "I am. Go there. I'm on the jet. I'll be in Seattle in 4 hours. "The jet?" Alice asked, confused. "Xander, you work in logistics in Chicago. Since when do you have a jet? There's a lot we need to catch up on, Ellie." Alexander said darkly. But right now, just know one thing. Marcus Sterling just made the last mistake of his life. The executive suite at the Four Seasons was larger than the first apartment Alice and Marcus had shared. It had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the rain-slicked city, a marble bathroom the size of a garage, and a bed that looked like a cloud. But Alice couldn't relax. She sat on the edge of the velvet sofa, still in her damp clothes, staring at her reflection in the darkened window. She looked ghostly, pale, hollow-eyed, defeated. How had she let it get this far? She was an educated woman. She had a degree in art history. She had been a gallery manager before Marcus convinced her that supporting his career was a full-time job. She had let herself become small so he could feel big. A knock at the door made her jump. She approached cautiously, looking through the peephole. It wasn't room service. Standing there was a man in a sharp black suit wearing an earpiece. Beside him was a woman with severe glasses and a briefcase. Alice opened the door a crack. "Yes, Ms. Sterling," the woman said. "I'm Sarah Jenkins. I'm Mr. Thorne's personal legal counsel. He sent us ahead to secure the room and debrief you before he arrives." "Mr. Thorne?" Alice blinked. "You mean Zander?" "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Alexander Thorne." Alice let them in, bewildered. "I don't understand. Zander, he manages a warehouse. How does he have legal counsel?" Sarah exchanged a glance with the security guard. She set her briefcase on the mahogany coffee table and clicked it open. "Ms. Sterling, your brother hasn't managed a warehouse in 6 years. He owns the warehouses. He owns the shipping lines. He owns the logistics software." She pulled out a glossy corporate magazine. On the cover was a man looking out over a skyline. His face rugged, handsome, and fiercely intelligent. The headline read, "The Invisible Billionaire, How Alexander Thorne Built Apex Dynamics into a Global Superpower." Alice gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. That's Zander. Apex Dynamics just acquired a majority stake in several major tech and legal firms last quarter. Sarah explained, pulling out a legal pad, "Including the parent company of the law firm representing your husband." Alice's knees gave out, and she sank onto the sofa. "What? We'll get to that," Sarah said, a shark-like grin flashing across her face. "But first, we need details. Everything Marcus said. Everything he threatened. We need to build the narrative before the divorce hearing next week." For the next 2 hours, Alice poured her heart out. She told them about the emotional abuse, the financial control, the infidelity. Sarah took copious notes, her expression growing darker with every page. "He says the prenup leaves me with nothing." Alice finished wiping her eyes with a tissue. Sarah scoffed. "Bratton and Hughes wrote that prenup. It's a standard aggressive contract. But it has holes. Specifically, it doesn't account for undeclared assets. And trust me, men like Marcus Sterling always hide money." Suddenly, the door to the suite burst open. Alexander Thorne strode in. He looked different than the brother she remembered. The flannel shirts and baseball caps were gone, replaced by a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than Marcus's car. He had filled out his shoulders broad, his jawline sharper. But his eyes' warm, protective blue were the same. "Ellie," he breathed out. "Zander." She ran to him, burying her face in his chest. He smelled like expensive cologne and rain. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight as if trying to glue her broken pieces back together. "I'm so sorry," she wept. "I'm so sorry I stayed away." "Shh," he soothed, stroking her hair. "None of that. You're safe now. That's all that matters." He pulled back, holding her at arm's length, his eyes scanning her face. His expression hardened when he saw the redness around her eyes and the trembling of her hands. Did he hit you? Xander asked, his voice low and dangerous. No, Alice shook her head. Not physically. But he humiliated me, Xander. He treated me like I was nothing. He's going to leave me homeless. He said I have no one. Xander turned to Sarah. What's the status on Sterling's financials? Sarah tapped her tablet. Our forensic accountants have been inside his firm's servers for the last hour. We found it. He's been funneling bonuses into an offshore account in the Caymans under a shell company called Nemesis Holdings. He didn't declare it in the initial divorce filing. Xander nodded grimly. Perjury. Fraud. And, Sarah added, he's utilizing company funds to pay for the apartment he just rented for his mistress. That's embezzlement. Xander walked over to the window, looking out at the city lights. He thinks he's a big fish, doesn't he? He's a vice president at a mid-tier firm. He's up for promotion to senior partner next month, Alice added softly. That's all he cares about. His reputation. Xander turned back, a cold fire burning in his eyes. Reputation. Good. We can work with that. He walked over to the coffee table and picked up the picture of Marcus that Sarah had pulled up on her tablet. He studied the smug face of the man who had hurt his little sister. He wants a court battle? Xander asked. He wants to play games with the law. He hired the best lawyers in the city, Alice warned. Bratton and Hughes. Xander laughed. It was a dark, rich sound. Ellie, do you know why I never told you about the business about the money? Because you wanted to be treated normally? Partly. But mostly because I wanted to know who was around me for the right reasons. Marcus. He married you when we had nothing. I thought he actually loved you. I was wrong. He tossed the tablet onto the couch. Tomorrow morning we go shopping. You need a new wardrobe. Then we are going to meet with his lawyers. We can't meet them yet, Alice said nervously. We don't have a strategy. I am the strategy, Xander said. I'm going to buy the building his office is in. Then I'm going to buy the bank that holds his mortgage. And then, he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then I'm going to introduce myself. As my brother, no. Xander corrected. As the new majority shareholder of the firm representing him. He poured a glass of water and handed it to Alice. Get some sleep, Ellie. You're going to need your strength. The first hearing is in 3 days. Marcus expects you to walk in there, alone, crying and begging for a settlement. What are we going to do? Alice asked. Xander sat beside her, his face grim. We're going to let him think. He's won. We're going to let him bloat with arrogance. We're going to let him stand up in court and list every reason why you deserve nothing. He took her hand. And then when he's done, I'm going to walk through those doors and burn his entire world to the ground. The next morning, the sun broke over Seattle, piercing through the grey clouds that had mirrored Alice's mood the night before. But today the light didn't feel harsh. It felt like a spotlight. Alice woke up in the massive king-sized bed at the Four Seasons for a split second, forgetting where she was. Then the memory of the shattered vase and Marcus's cruel laugh washed over her. But before the grief could pull her under, a knock at the door signaled the arrival of a new reality. Room service rolled in a cart laden with fresh fruit Belgian waffles and a carafe of strong coffee. Alexander was already sitting on the balcony, dressed in a casual navy sweater that probably cost more than Alice's entire wardrobe. He was on the phone, his voice low and clipped. I don't care what the board says, Jenkins. Initiate the hostile takeover of Sterling's lender. Yes, First City Bank. I want to own his mortgage by noon. Bye. He hung up and turned to Alice, a gentle smile replacing the shark-like expression he wore for business. Eat up, Ellie. We have a busy day. Xander, I can't eat. Alice said, sitting down opposite him. I feel sick. What if Marcus calls? What if he tries to come here? He won't, Xander said, pouring her a cup of coffee. He thinks you're cowering in a motel somewhere. Let him think that. Today isn't about him. It's about you. I don't know who me is anymore, she admitted, looking down at her hands. I've been Marcus's wife for 10 years. Then today we find Alice again. Xander stood up. I've cleared my schedule. Sarah is handling the legal filings. You and I are going to Magnolia Row. Alice's eyes widened. Magnolia Row was the most exclusive shopping district in the city. It was where Marcus bought his suits and where he forbade Alice from shopping because it was unnecessary overhead. Xander, that's too expensive. Stop, he said firmly, but kind. Money is a tool, Alice. Marcus used it as a weapon to control you. I'm using it as a shield to protect you. Now get dressed. An hour later, a black town car dropped them off in front of Valentina's, a high-fashion boutique known for dressing celebrities and socialites. Alice felt out of place in her jeans and sweater, shrinking as they walked onto the plush white carpet. The sales associate, sensing her insecurity, didn't rush to greet her. They judged her instantly a sad woman in last season's clothes. But then they looked at Alexander. They saw the bespoke watch, the confident stride, the way he commanded the space without saying a word. We need everything, Alexander told the floor manager, a sharp-eyed woman named Claudette. From evening wear to courtroom attire, and throw away what she's wearing now, Xander Alice hissed. Burn the past, Ellie, he whispered back. For the next 3 hours, Alice was transformed. She tried on silk blouses that felt like water against her skin, structured blazers that made her shoulders look broad and capable, and heels that gave her height and power. As she stepped out of the dressing room in a tailored crimson dress that hugged her curves in a way Marcus would have called too bold, she caught her reflection. She didn't look like a victim. She looked dangerous. We'll take it, Xander said from the leather armchair, sipping an espresso. All of it. As they were waiting for the items to be wrapped, the bell above the door chimed. Alice froze. The voice that drifted in was high-pitched, giggly, and nauseatingly familiar. Oh, Marcus, look, this is where I want to get the dress for the gala. It was Jessica. And trailing behind her, looking smug and currently typing on his BlackBerry, was Marcus. Alice's instinct was to hide. She ducked behind a rack of cashmere coats, her heart thumping so hard she thought it would bruise her ribs. Xander, noticing her panic, stood up slowly. He's here, Alice whispered, her face pale. With her. Stay here, Xander said, his voice dropping an octave. Or come out and face them. It's your choice, Ellie. But remember, you aren't the one who should be ashamed. Alice took a deep breath. She looked at her reflection in the mirror one last time. The woman in the crimson dress wasn't a coward. She stepped out from behind the rack. Marcus was standing by the jewelry counter, holding up a diamond bracelet for Jessica, a bracelet far more expensive than anything he had ever bought Alice. Jessica was squealing, clinging to his arm. Marcus, Alice said. Her voice was steady, cutting through the store's ambient music like a knife. Marcus spun around, nearly dropping the bracelet. His eyes widened in shock, scanning Alice from head to toe. For a moment, he didn't recognize her. The dowdy housewife was gone. In her place was a stunning woman, radiating ice-cold fury. Alice! He sputtered. What are you doing here? How did you get in here? Jessica stopped giggling. She looked Alice up and down, a sneer forming on her heavily glossed lips. Oh, look who it is. The ex. Did you come to apply for a job as a cleaner? Marcus laughed, regaining his composure. Alice, seriously. You can't afford to breathe the air in this place. Did you follow us? "Are you stalking me? I'll call the police. I'm shopping, Marcus," Alice said coolly. "Something you never let me do." "With what money?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a menacing hiss. "You have zero access to our accounts. I froze them this morning. You're broke." "She's not broke," a deep voice rumbled from behind Alice. Alexander stepped forward, placing a protective hand on Alice's shoulder. He towered over Marcus by 2 inches and outweighed him by 20 pounds of muscle. Marcus looked at Alexander confused. He saw the expensive clothes, the air of authority. "And who is this, your rebound?" "That was fast, Alice." "I didn't know you had it in you to turn tricks for cash." Alice gasped, but Alexander didn't flinch. He just smiled a terrifying, predatory smile. "Careful, Marcus," Alexander said softly. "You're talking to my sister." Marcus blinked. "Sister O, right. The brother from... where was it? Ohio." "The warehouse guy," Marcus chuckled, relaxing. He looked Alexander up and down with disdain. "Nice suit. Rented for the day to make her feel better. Look, buddy, take your little sister and get out. You're embarrassing yourselves." "We're actually just finishing up," Alexander said. He turned to the sales manager, Claudette, who was watching the scene with wide eyes. "Claudette, add the bracelet Mr. Sterling is holding to my bill." "Excuse me," Marcus snapped. "I'm buying this." "Actually," Alexander said, pulling out a black titanium credit card that made a heavy clink when he tapped it on the glass counter. "I just bought the entire fall collection in this store, including that bracelet. It's exclusive stock, and I have exclusivity rights for the next hour." He looked at Jessica, who was still clutching the jewelry. "Hand it over," Alexander said. "It's Alice's now." Jessica looked at Marcus, outraged. "Marcus, do something!" Marcus's face turned purple. "You can't do that. Who do you think you are?" "I'm the guy paying the bill," Alexander said, calmly. "Something you're going to have a hard time doing very soon." Claudette, sensing where the real power in the room lay, gently took the bracelet from a stunned Jessica and placed it in a box. She handed it to Alice. "Marcus," Alice said, holding the bag. "You told me to leave with nothing. I'm starting to think you're the one who's going to end up empty-handed." She turned on her heel and walked out the door, Alexander right behind her. As the door closed, they heard Jessica shriek, "You let her take my bracelet," and Marcus shouting at the manager. Once they were in the safety of the town car, Alice started to laugh. It started as a giggle and turned into a full-body release of tension. "Did you see his face?" she gasped, wiping a tear. Alexander grinned. "That was just the appetizer, Ellie. Wait until the main course." 3 days later, the atmosphere shifted from retail therapy to legal warfare. The venue was the conference room of Bratton and Hughes, the shark-infested law firm Marcus had hired. It was a glass-walled room on the 40th floor, designed to intimidate. Alice sat on one side of the long mahogany table. Next to her was Sarah Jenkins Zander's ferocious attorney. Alexander was not in the room. He insisted that for this part, Alice needed to appear vulnerable, or at least unsupported by big money. He was in the building, however, waiting in the lobby reading the Wall Street Journal, keeping a low profile. Opposite them sat Marcus, looking smug in a pinstripe suit, and his lawyer, Richard Bratton. Bratton was a legend in divorce court, a man known for leaving spouses destitute. Jessica was there too, sitting in the corner, scrolling on her phone, clearly brought along just to unsettling Alice. "Let's make this quick." Bratton started, not even opening his file. "My client is generous. He is willing to offer a one-time payment of $10,000 to help Miss Sterling get settled in, whatever accommodation she can afford. In exchange, she signs a full NDA, non-disclosure agreement, and waives all rights to spousal support, the house, and the retirement accounts. Sarah Jenkins adjusted her glasses. Mr. Bratton, this offer is insulting. The marital assets are valued at over $4 million. A 50-50 split is the minimum starting point. Marcus laughed, leaning back in his chair. 50-50, Alice didn't earn a dime of that money. I made it. I invested it. Actually, Sarah said, pulling out a document, according to our records, Alice paid for your law school tuition, your bar exam fees, and the down payment on your first condo. That contribution is foundational to your current wealth. Ancient history, Bratton waved his hand. The prenup handles all that. It explicitly states that premarital contributions are gifts, not investments. Ironclad. Alice spoke up, her voice steady. What about the accounts you didn't list, Marcus? The room went silent. Marcus's eyes darted to his lawyer. I don't know what you're talking about, Marcus lied, though a bead of sweat appeared on his temple. The Cayman accounts, Alice said, reciting the information Zander's team had dug up. Under Nemesis Holdings, $300,000 transferred last Tuesday. $50,000 transferred the day you kicked me out. Bratton stiffened. He looked at his client. Marcus, is there something you want to tell me? She's lying, Marcus shouted, slamming his hand on the table. She's hallucinating. She's desperate, Richard. Look at her. She's trying to blackmail me. He turned his venom on Alice. You want to play dirty? Fine. If you don't sign this deal today, I will drag this out for years. I will bleed you dry in legal fees. I will make sure you can't get a job in this town. I know people, Alice. Powerful people. I'm sure you do, Sarah interrupted calmly. But hiding assets is a felony, Mr. Sterling. If we bring this to a judge, it won't just be a divorce. It will be a criminal investigation. Marcus sneered. You have no proof, just wild accusations from a scorned housewife. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. The offer stands for 24 hours. 10 grand. Take it or leave it. After tomorrow, the offer is 0. We're done here, Bratton added, closing his folder. My client has a very important meeting with the board of directors at Sterling Vance. He is about to be named senior partner, and we don't have time for this nonsense. Marcus leaned over the table, his face inches from Alice's. You hear that, Alice, senior partner? That's a 7-figure salary, and you won't see a penny of it. Go back to your brother's trailer park. Alice didn't flinch. She looked him dead in the eye. Enjoy your meeting, Marcus. I hear the board has some restructuring to discuss. Marcus frowned, confused by her confidence. What do you know about my board? More than you think, she said. Marcus scoffed and stormed out of the room, Jessica trotting behind him like a show pony. Bratton gave Sarah a cold nod and followed. Once they were gone, Sarah exhaled. He took the bait. He lied on the record, Alice noted. He denied the Cayman accounts. Exactly, Sarah smiled. That's perjury. We have him on the hook. But now it's time for the net. Sarah pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Mr. Thorne. They just left. He's heading to his office for the board meeting. Alice could hear Alexander's voice on the other end, though she couldn't make out the words. Sarah nodded. Understood. We'll meet you at the courthouse on Friday. Sarah hung up and looked at Alice. Your brother is busy, doing what he just finished acquiring the controlling interest in the commercial real estate firm that owns the building Bratton & Hughes operates in. He's technically their landlord now. Alice's jaw dropped. He bought the building, and Sarah continued packing up her briefcase. He just sent a notification to the board of Sterling Vance. He's not just a shareholder, Alice. As of this morning, Apex Dynamics, your brother's company, is the primary investor for their new merger. He effectively owns the vote on Marcus's promotion. Marcus doesn't know, not yet. He's walking into that board meeting thinking he's being crowned king. He has no idea the executioner is waiting for him. Alice felt a mix of vindication and terror. So what happens on Friday? Friday is the court hearing for the temporary restraining order regarding the assets Sarah explained. Marcus thinks he's going to walk in there, show the prenup, and dismiss you. He thinks you'll be alone. And instead, Sarah grinned, the CEO of the company that owns his career, his debt and his future, is going to walk through those doors. Thursday afternoon was supposed to be the highlight of Marcus Sterling's life. He walked into the headquarters of Sterling Vance Enterprises, feeling like a king. He was wearing his lucky tie, a Hermes silk piece that cost $600, and he had already drafted his acceptance speech for the senior partner position. He bypassed his assistant's desk, ignoring the ringing phones, and headed straight for the CEO's office. He imagined the scene Mr. Vance would shake his hand, pour him a scotch, and hand him a contract with a 7-figure salary. With that money, he could pay off the maintenance fees for his hidden accounts, buy Jessica the penthouse she wouldn't shut up about, and finally bury Alice in legal fees until she disappeared. He knocked on the heavy oak door and entered without waiting for a response. Ready to sign the papers, Arthur. Marcus beamed, stepping into the room. But the atmosphere in the office was wrong. It was cold. Arthur Vance, the CEO who had mentored Marcus for 5 years, was standing by the window, his back turned. Sitting on the leather sofa was the head of human resources and the company's general counsel. Marcus stopped his smile, faltering. "What's going on? Is this the welcoming committee?" Arthur turned around. He looked aged, his face pale and drawn. He didn't offer Marcus a drink. He didn't offer a handshake. "Sit down, Marcus," Arthur said quietly. Marcus sank into a chair, a knot of dread tightening in his stomach. "Is there a problem with the merger?" "The merger is proceeding," the general counsel said sharply, "thanks to a new infusion of capital from our primary investor. However, the new majority stakeholder demanded a rigorous due diligence audit of all senior leadership before finalizing the deal." Marcus felt a bead of sweat roll down his back. "Standard procedure. My numbers are clean. I brought in $4 million in revenue last quarter, alone." "Your sales numbers are clean," the HR director interjected, sliding a thick file across the desk. "Your personal compliance disclosures, however, are not." Marcus stared at the file. It was labeled Internal Audit M. Sterling. The audit flagged several irregularities. Arthur said, his voice trembling with suppressed anger. Specifically the diversion of client retention bonuses into a shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands. Nemesis Holdings, I believe it's called. The room spun. That account was supposed to be invisible. He had paid a hacker $10,000 to bury the digital trail. That must be a mistake. Marcus stammered, his charm evaporating. "I can explain. It's a holding account for future tax purposes." "It's embezzlement, Marcus," Arthur roared, slamming his hand on the desk. "You were skimming off the top of the firm's profits, and you were doing it while using company resources to fund personal real estate transactions. Arthur, please." Marcus stood up, his hands shaking. "I'm your top earner. You can't let a technicality derail this. Who is this new investor?" "Let me talk to them. I can smooth this over." "You can't talk to them," Arthur said coldly. "They have refused all direct contact with you. In fact, their primary condition for saving this company from bankruptcy was your immediate removal." "Removal?" Marcus whispered. "You're fired, Marcus," Arthur said. "Effective immediately. Security is waiting outside to escort you to the lobby. You are not to return to your office. Your phone and laptop are company property. Leave them here." "You can't do this," Marcus screamed, his face turning a blotchy red. "I built this department. I have a mortgage. I have a divorce trial tomorrow." "You should have thought of that before you cooked the books," the general counsel said, checking his watch. "You're lucky we aren't pressing criminal charges yet. The new stakeholder is reviewing the file to decide if they want to involve the FBI. I suggest you leave before they make up their mind." Marcus stumbled out of the office, dazed. 2 security guards men he had ignored every day for 5 years were waiting for him. They grabbed him by the elbows, not gently, and marched him past the glass-walled conference room. The entire office watched. The junior associates, the secretaries, the interns, everyone saw the golden boy of Sterling Vance being frog-marched out of the building without even his jacket. He was shoved out onto the sidewalk, the heavy glass doors locking behind him. It started to rain. Marcus stood there, shivering, stripped of his corporate armor. Panic began to claw at his throat. He had no job. He had no access to his company accounts. His hidden Cayman money was now a liability that could send him to prison. He patted his pockets and realized he still had his personal cell phone. He dialed Bratton, his lawyer. "Richard," Marcus gasped when the lawyer answered. "We have a problem." "I'm busy, Marcus," Bratton's bored voice replied. "What is it?" I had a setback at work. Politics. It's temporary." Marcus lied, his voice high and thin. "But I need that divorce settled tomorrow. I need you to crush Alice. If I have to pay her alimony now, I'm ruined. You have to destroy the prenup argument. Make sure she gets nothing. I need every liquid asset I can get my hands on." "Don't worry," Bratton soothed, though he sounded distracted. "I've reviewed her financials. She's living in a hotel burning through whatever savings she has. She has a brother helping her, but he's a nobody from the Midwest. We'll bury them, Marcus. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you win." Marcus hung up, looking up at the skyscraper he used to rule. He wiped the rain from his face, a snarl twisting his lips. "Alice," he hissed. "This is somehow her fault. She's bad luck. Tomorrow I'm going to make her pay." He hailed a cab, unaware that high above him, in the penthouse office of the building next door, a man in a charcoal suit was watching him through a telescope, a satisfied smirk on his face. Alexander lowered the telescope and turned to his sister. "The king has fallen. Now let's go take his crown." Friday morning arrived with a heavy grey sky, the kind of weather that usually made courthouses feel like tombs. But inside the Superior Court of Washington, the atmosphere in Courtroom 4B was electric. Alice sat at the plaintiff's table, her back straight, her hands folded calmly on the table. She wore a tailored navy suit from Valentina's that made her look like a CEO, not a discarded housewife. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek chignon, and she wore the diamond earrings Xander had bought her just to sparkle under the harsh fluorescent lights. Next to her, Sarah Jenkins was arranging stacks of files with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an operation. On the other side of the aisle, the mood was frantic. Marcus sat hunched over dark circles under his eyes. He hadn't slept. He was wearing a backup suit that didn't fit quite right, and he kept checking his phone, hoping for a miracle email from his old boss. Next to him, Richard Bratton looked annoyed. He checked his Rolex every 30 seconds, clearly wishing he was on the golf course. Jessica sat in the gallery behind Marcus, chewing gum, loudly looking bored. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed. The Honorable Judge Lydia Halloway swept in her black robes, billowing. She was a stern woman, known for her zero-tolerance policy on courtroom theatrics. "Be seated," Judge Halloway said, adjusting her glasses. "We are here for the matter of Sterling Vaux." Sterling. Preliminary hearing regarding asset distribution and spousal support. "Mr. Bratton, you filed a motion to dismiss Ms. Sterling's claim for support." Bratton stood up, buttoning his jacket. "Yes, Your Honor. This is a simple case. The parties signed a prenuptial agreement 10 years ago. It states clearly that in the event of a divorce, both parties leave with their separate property. Ms. Sterling has no separate property. My client, however, has significant assets generated solely by his own hard work. Ms. Sterling is attempting to extort money she did not earn." He gestured dismissively at Alice. "She has not been employed for a decade. She contributed nothing to the marital estate." Marcus nodded vigorously, shooting a glare at Alice. "Ms. Jenkins." The judge turned to Alice's table. Sarah stood up. "Your Honor, the defense argues that the prenup is valid. We argue it was signed under duress and based on fraudulent financial disclosures. Furthermore, we intend to prove that Mr. Sterling has committed perjury in his financial affidavit filed with this court 3 days ago." Bratton scoffed loudly. "Objection, baseless accusations." "I have the bank records, Your Honor," Sarah said, holding up a flash drive. "Records of an offshore account in the Cayman Islands that Mr. Sterling failed to disclose. An account containing nearly $500,000 of marital funds." The judge's eyes narrowed. She looked at Marcus. "Mr. Sterling, is this true?" Marcus stood up, sweating. "It's a lie. It's a clerical error. My accountant made a mistake." "A $500,000 mistake?" the judge asked dryly. "Regardless," Bratton interrupted, trying to regain control. "Even if the account exists, the prenup protects my client's earnings. And frankly, Your Honor, Ms. Sterling doesn't need the money. She's currently staying in the presidential suite at the Four Seasons. She's wearing a $5,000 suit. Clearly she has found a benefactor." He smirked, implying something dirty. "Perhaps the court should investigate her new source of income before seizing my client's hard-earned money." Marcus laughed. "Yeah, ask her where she got the money. Probably from her redneck brother." Alice felt a flash of anger, but she didn't move. She just looked at the double doors at the back of the courtroom. "Actually, Your Honor," Sarah said, a small smile playing on her lips, "we are happy to disclose the source of Ms. Sterling's support. In fact, he is here today to testify regarding the true value of the marital assets and the corporate fraud committed by the defendant." "Who is this witness?" Judge Holloway asked. "Ms. Sterling's brother," Sarah said. Marcus snorted loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Oh, please, what's he going to testify about the price of corn in Ohio? This is a waste of the court's time." "Mr. Bratton," the judge warned, "control your client. Call the witness," the judge ordered. Sarah turned to the back of the room. "The defense calls Mr. Alexander Thorne." The heavy oak doors swung open. The room went silent. Alexander walked in. He didn't look like a redneck from Ohio. He looked like a titan of industry. He wore a three-piece suit that screamed power. His stride was confident, his expression unreadable. But it wasn't just his appearance. It was the reaction of the people in the room. Richard Bratton, the arrogant lawyer, dropped his pen. His mouth fell open. He recognized the man instantly. Every lawyer in the city knew who Alexander Thorne was. He was the cover of Forbes last month. He was the man who had just bought the Skyline. Alexander walked past the bar and stood in the witness box. He looked briefly at Alice and gave her a reassuring nod. Then he turned his cold blue eyes on Marcus. Marcus looked confused. He leaned over to Bratton. "Why do you look like you've seen a ghost? It's just her brother." "Shut up, Marcus." Bratton hissed, his face pale. "State your name for the record," the bailiff said. "Alexander Thorne," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "And your occupation?" the judge asked. She was leaning forward, looking interested. "I am the founder and CEO of Apex Dynamics," Alexander said calmly. I am also the principal owner of the commercial real estate firm Thorne Properties, and as of yesterday the majority shareholder of Sterling Vance Enterprises." The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Marcus froze. His brain tried to process the words. Sterling Vance. That was his company. Wait. Marcus stood up, pointing a trembling finger. You are the new investor. Sit down, Mr. Sterling." The judge banged her gavel. Alexander didn't break eye contact with Marcus. "Yes, Marcus, I am the investor who ordered the audit on you. I am the one who flagged your Cayman accounts, and I am the one who fired you yesterday." The color drained from Marcus's face so fast he looked like a corpse. He collapsed back into his chair. "Mr. Thorne," Sarah continued pacing in front of the witness stand, "can you explain why you are involved in this divorce proceeding?" "Because," Alexander said, turning to the judge, "Mr. Sterling claimed my sister was destitute. He claimed she contributed nothing to his success. He claimed he held all the power." Alexander leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "I am here to inform the court that Mr. Sterling is currently unemployed, under investigation for corporate embezzlement, and deeply in debt to a bank that I also happen to own. My sister, on the other hand, is the beneficiary of a trust I established for her years ago, which she never accessed because she wanted to build a life with her husband." He looked at Bratton. "And Mr. Bratton, regarding your legal fees, I believe your firm leases its office space from me. My legal team just found a clause in your lease regarding conduct detrimental to the landlord's reputation. Representing a known embezzler might just put your lease in jeopardy." Bratton looked like he was about to vomit. He began shoving papers into his briefcase. "Your Honor, I may have a conflict of interest. I might need to recuse myself." "You're leaving me!" Marcus shrieked, grabbing Bratton's arm. "You can't leave me. Get off me!" Bratton snapped. "You didn't tell me your brother-in-law was Alexander Thorne. You're on your own, Sterling." The courtroom erupted into murmurs. The judge banged her gavel, but she was hiding a smile. Alexander stood up and walked over to the plaintiff's table. He stood behind Alice, his hand on her shoulder. "Marcus told my sister to leave with nothing," Alexander said, his voice carrying to the back of the room. "So we are here to ensure he gets exactly what he asked for. Nothing." Marcus sat alone at his table, shaking as Jessica quietly gathered her purse and slipped out the back door, leaving him to face his reckoning alone. Judge Holloway didn't need long to make her decision. The evidence of fraud was overwhelming, and with Marcus's lawyer effectively resigning in the middle of the hearing, the defense had crumbled into dust. "Mr. Sterling," the judge said, her voice echoing in the silent courtroom, "in light of the undisclosed assets and the clear evidence of financial malfeasance, I am invalidating the prenuptial agreement. Furthermore, I am ordering an immediate freeze on all your remaining accounts, pending a forensic audit." She looked down at him with disdain. "You are to vacate the marital residence within 24 hours. Given your current employment status, I am awarding temporary spousal support to be paid from the liquidation of your luxury vehicles. Case closed." The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot ending Marcus's life. As the courtroom cleared, Marcus sat slumped at the table, his head in his hands. He looked small. The arrogance that had defined him for a decade had evaporated, leaving behind a pathetic, frightened man. Alice gathered her purse. She felt lighter, as if a heavy coat had been lifted from her shoulders. She turned to leave, but Marcus scrambled up, rushing toward her. Alexander stepped forward, his body a solid wall between his sister and her ex-husband. But Alice touched Xander's arm. "It's okay," she said softly. "I want to hear this." Marcus looked at her, his eyes red and desperate. "Alice, wait. Please, we can fix this. I was under a lot of stress. The promotion, the pressure, it made me crazy. But I love you. You know I love you. We have 10 years of history." He reached out a hand, trembling. "Talk to your brother. Tell him to call off the dogs. I can get my job back if he vouches for me. We can go back to how it was. Just you and me." Alice looked at his hand. She remembered how that hand used to hold hers. She also remembered how it had pointed at the door just a few days ago, casting her out into the rain. "We can't go back, Marcus," she said, her voice calm and final. "Because the woman who tolerated your disrespect, she doesn't exist anymore." "But what will I do?" Marcus pleaded, tears leaking from his eyes. "I have nothing. No job, no money, no home. Jessica left me. I'm ruined." Alice stepped closer, her eyes hard. "You have exactly what you wanted, Marcus. You wanted a fresh start. You wanted to be free of dead weight. Now you are." She reached into her purse and pulled out her old wedding ring, a modest band she had kept even after he bought her a flashy upgrade for show. She placed it on the table next to him. "You told me to leave with nothing," she whispered. "But I'm leaving with my dignity. You're the one who is leaving with nothing." She turned on her heel and walked toward the exit. Alexander held the door open for her, casting one last look of pity at Marcus before following his sister. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sun was breaking through the clouds, illuminating the wet pavement. "So," Alexander said, loosening his tie as they walked down the courthouse steps. "What now? You have the settlement money coming, and I have a few empty offices in the city if you want to start that gallery you always talked about." Alice took a deep breath of the fresh, crisp air. For the first time in years, the future wasn't a terrifying void. It was a blank canvas. "I think I'd like that." She smiled, linking her arm through his. "But first, can we go get a burger? I'm starving." Alexander laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "A burger it is, my treat." As they walked away, a black sedan pulled up to the curb. But it wasn't for them. It was a repossession crew heading into the courthouse lot to tow Marcus's car. Alice didn't look back. She didn't need to. Her life was just beginning. Wow, talk about a reality check. Marcus thought he was untouchable, but he forgot the most important rule of life. Be careful who you step on, because you never know who's watching. Seeing his arrogance crumble the moment he realized who Alice's brother was. Honestly, that was one of the most satisfying moments of instant karma I've ever read. It just goes to show that money and status can disappear in a second, but family and integrity are forever. Marcus ended up with exactly what he tried to give Alice: absolutely nothing. What about you guys? Do you think Marcus deserved a second chance, or did he get exactly what was coming to him? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of revenge and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. We have a crazy cheating revenge story coming up next week, involving a lottery ticket and a secret double life that you do not want to miss. Thanks for watching, and remember, karma is always watching.